Welcome to the continuation of the NADOG Days of Summer. Today is Tuesday, July 2nd, so we're just a few days away from Independence Day, is why we did a little bit of 4th of July trivia before we started. If you'd like to participate in trivia, make sure you come to the events live and you come 10 minutes early. We always have something fun to do. I'm Jim Shield. I'm the founder and head of community at NADOG, and with me, as always, is my partner and co-host, Mr. Brian Dawson. Brian, you want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Brian Dawson. I'm excited to join today with you and our guest, Jim. And as I like to say, I'm the Robin to your Batman for NADOG Days of Summer. So ready to get going here. All right. So I will take it from there. Today with us, we have, I can't act like I don't know them. They're actually two of my favorite people in the open source community and DevOps space. We have Tracy Ragan, CEO and founder of DeployHub. And we have Mitch Ashley, who is the chief technology advisor for Futurum Group and the CTO of Techstrong TV. Mitch, did I announce Futurum correctly?
It's it took me a while. Futurum, it's the other way. Yeah, it's the
okay.
Futurum. Okay. Futurum. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, great to have you guys today. We'll be speaking with Mitch and Tracy about securing DevOps and microservices, making DevSecOps a reality, and we'll get some insight from Tracy and Mitch as to why we believe it still needs to be made a reality. Before we jump into the questioning, let's start with Tracy. Tracy, can you tell us a bit about your background and what you're up to these days?
Absolutely. So I have been in this field. We used to call it configuration management back in the day. I've been doing SCM and ALM and now DevOps and DevSecOps pretty much my entire career. I first got into the build space. I was a contractor, and I was fascinated with all the pieces and parts that go into it is included in a single binary, which led me down a road to creating a company called OpenMake Software. We pretty much distributed one of the first build automation tools, and still one of the only tools out there that actually replaces make files and scripts and hard-coded brittle scripts for putting a build together. It's been around for almost 30 years now, and I'm proud to say we wrote a really sticky product that people are still using. Right now, though, I'm working with the DeployHub. We are looking at this space in terms of all the pieces and parts. Now we call that software supply chain, and sometimes we call it software supply chain security. So that's where my head is right now, and my background really fits well with it. I have been on boards of many open source projects, including the Eclipse Foundation, the Open Source Security Foundation, and my favorite, the Continuous Delivery Foundation, all which have addressed this issue.
Awesome. Glad to have you. We are honored, Tracy, and I'm going to be excited to dig in and talk about the state of security with you. Mr. Ashley, can you do me a favor and tell us a bit about your background and what you're up to these days?
Sure, happy to. My career has been about a third as a practitioner, IT and software teams, and 2/3 being product development in the security space, SaaS applications, things like that, online cloud applications. So I got involved in DevOps not too long after I learned about this domain called DevOps.com, which is what Techstrong is. And really started applying it, kind of learning it with the IT team that I was running then. Then I got to apply it a couple of other times with some product teams. So learned a lot. I really enjoy leading in whatever capacity development teams that are working on products and IT as well. These days, I'm in more of the CTO and analyst space, and the chief technology advisor is part of our Techstrong's being acquired by Futurum Group, which is a large-scale senior analyst, data analytics, and media firm. So it's a real good fit with what we do. And so, my world keeps getting bigger, which means I got to work more and harder.
Of course, that's the reward for success, working harder. But I'm really excited. I think one of the fantastic things about having you on, Mitch, in particular, is You spend practically every day talking to a broad range of technology experts about a broad range of topics. So I'm really excited to hear your view on this. Before I hand you over to Jim, I do want to get from each of you guys. Tracy first. Can you share your favorite industry resource? That is a book, a blog, a podcast, or so for some of the older of us like me, your bulletin board service that you prefer to read. Maybe it's a subreddit, what have you. But what do you recommend that people lean into to gain more information?
Well, Mitch is here, and I'm not saying this because Mitch is here, but the Techstrong group is really, they are sharp folks over there. And if you've ever been on like the Techstrong, I do Techstrong gang with them, and I struggle to keep up. These guys really know the space. I also like the TLDR newsletter. I get that coming into my emails every day, and I read through them, and there's some really interesting information in that newsletter. So that's where I get a lot of my info. Awesome.
Mitch, you're up, and you can't say Techstrong TV.
Okay. Then what I'll do is I'll say it is the fastest growing video show and podcast is one that Tracy hosts, and also my wife, Jody Ashley, hosts, called Techstrong Women. I didn't say Techstrong TV. But it's talking with amazing women who are doing amazing things in tech. And it's just the most phenomenal people that are on that podcast and video show. So I have to recommend that. And then I started blogging and podcasting in about 2004. It's original podcast and blog. It was called, mine was called The Converging Network, and the podcast was Still Secure After All These Years. Well, that's turned into DevOps Chats. So if you go to DevOpsChatsPodcast.com, I'm self-servingly plugging two things that benefit me, but please, it's with some great stuff on all of those. And all of those. I love podcasts. It's the best way to get information, just like this is.
Awesome. Thank you, Mitch. And with that, Jim, I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to you to get into our discussion today.
Thank you. I like when you call me Batman, though, so maybe you can just keep doing that.
Okay, Batman.
I have a Batman tattoo, by the way.
Oh, do you? Wow. Oh, wow.
I guess Mitch is Batman.
No. Everybody can say I'm Batman.
Well, cool. Well, I was really excited to have you guys on. I know, Mitch, you've been to at least one or two of the NADOG events there in Denver, and Tracy, I've known you for a while now as well. So we're all friends here, and the topic that we all decided for today is securing DevOps and microservices, making DevSecOps a reality. So one of the first thoughts about this, though, is, DevOps, I've been in this space for over 20 years. It wasn't called DevOps at the beginning, and I don't know exactly when it was. It was just over 10 years, right? 12 or 13 years ago now. So DevOps is a few decades old, and DevSecOps is a handful of years, 5 or 6 years ago when someone stuck sec in the middle of DevOps. And I think most people, or a lot of people, would consider these both more on the mature side, right, as far as practices go. Since we have this is our first time with two guests on as well, so we're gonna try to do a little mini round robin here. So maybe Tracy, I can direct this to you first, and Mitch, you can follow with your response too. But I wanted to get your perspective. Do you think that we've already achieved security and application delivery, or is that something that we really still have a steep hill to climb?
So it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about monolithic applications and kind of older languages, maybe we have reached a certain level of maturity, but our industry never stays the same, and DevOps has to pivot when technology pivots. Now, DevOps engineers haven't had to address this pivot really in the way we are having to today. And today we have two converging problems. We have monolithic applications being broken into decoupled environments, which means that we have a ton more of workflows that we have to manage. And we have security issues that we haven't really addressed before. If we were mature in the security space, we would have never had Log4j. Let's just put it that way. So nothing is ever totally mature. maybe things get old and long in the tooth if we're staying with thinking about DevOps from a monolithic standpoint. But when we start thinking about it from a decoupled architecture, APIs everywhere, microservices everywhere, tons of workflows being developed and having to update them just to generate an SBOM, we have a ton of work to do in that space. So no, it's not mature yet.
I'll jump in on that too, Jim. I have this theory of technology, which is nothing ever goes away. So if we ever introduce, which is probably still Flash websites, Adobe Flash still running out there, even though no browser supports it anymore. And to Tracy's point, we're always kind of implementing the next new thing, whether it's AI or microservices, cloud native, whatever it might be. And sometimes we get to do that in greenfield, and that's a luxury. Most of the time, when you're in an organization, you might do it on a new project, but you're also working with other applications that aren't leveraging that yet. DevOps was the same way when we started doing that. So I think one of the things about DevOps is I learned pretty quickly, because it took me a while to kind of really figure out what is it and how do you do it, is it's not a technology, it's a how. It's how you create software, and it's a set of kind of ideas and principles that come out of different sources, from total quality management to Toyota manufacturing, et cetera. And it's all around the idea of, and it's enabled several things around microservices too. It's all around the idea of creating smaller units of work that you can work on faster, you can complete sooner, and remove bottlenecks in the process. And through that much greater repetition, with automation, we can do things in the software development cycle much differently. Well, guess what? Microservices looks just like that. A lot smaller elements, right, of work services that we're breaking down in smaller and smaller. We could scale it up with Kubernetes and everything else. So it's interesting that I don't know which became first, chicken and egg. Was microservices first, and so that really spurned the use of DevOps, or vice versa? I kind of think it's more DevOps, but maybe in parallel. There may be no answer to that question.
That's interesting. You hit, and I'll throw out there, I'm sort of the impression that the world got hip. If I'm gonna, since I voted for Jaws in the trivia, I'll use the word hip. The world got hip to kind of the power of having development and operations work together as one around the shared objective of delivering secure, functional software repeatedly, right? And then we all kind of felt security belonged in there, but it was being missed. So we said, hey, let's add sec. Let's get the security team in on this conversational loop. And I've stepped back a bit, right, from the DevOps evangelism and practitioner work, but it feels like sort of in that time frame we went from DevSecOps, and then immediately a bunch of effort went to building out the CISO's office and the CISO's tool suite. But I kind of feel like we never got to security and development teams working as one across practices and tooling. But again, my purview is a bit dated, but I sort of have this feeling that we never quite achieved the promise of DevSecOps as a continuous practice. You guys agree? Or?
100% agree.
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes we made is the same mistake security and networking made, and we've repeated it in the software world. In the networking and security world, they've learned it's no longer about, I have a box to do this and a box to do that, and if I have one of everything, I've got it. Kind of thinking of the problem in its own silo space. And we did that with DevSecOps, thinking, oh, if we just shift left, that's DevSecOps. Then we said, well, maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's shifting right too, or shifting everywhere. And I think we're at a kind of place of let's really reevaluate what truly creating secure software means, which is what DevSec is all about. Tracy, you and I are on different things all the time together. So apologies for stepping on you. You were about to talk.
No worries. Just saying that this is everything evolves, right? It gets old and then it evolves, and our industry evolves so quickly. And I just don't believe the DevOps pipeline has evolved as fast as it should. we talk about being agile, and we, over the years, we've talked about agile development and how important it is to get a 10-minute build. Well, those things are gone. That idea is gone. No build is really more than 10 minutes anymore because you're building a small container. So we just have to, the DevOps pipeline has to evolve to support this new architecture. And when we do, we need to include security in it, because if you're separating the data, you're fragmented, and security and DevOps data need to go together. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges that our industry faces, is how do we start really evolving these DevOps pipelines to include security steps? And we don't want to have two pipelines in two different places. I guess we can, as long as something's aggregating the information so that we actually can respond and have understanding of where all the pieces are, starting at where the commit was, now where is that commit running in production? That's the kind of data we need to be able to see.
So let me, since you were on this topic, and even though you asked or mentioned it, it's Mitch's turn to go first here. So Mitch, I'm going to direct this to you. Tracy's talking about decoupled architectures and microservices. From your experience, how have you seen that change in the organizational approach to security?
Well, it's interesting. Brian's been on DevOps Unbound, one of our shows that we talk about a lot of topics. And one of them, I don't remember if you were on for that one, but it's the question of, can you do microservices? Can you do cloud native without doing DevOps? Right. So it kind of pulls with it this idea of, I've got to be able to do things in much smaller increments and automate it and flow it through the pipeline, to exactly Tracy's point. I think people's reasons for both pursuing cloud native microservices as well as pursuing DevOps vary, right? And a lot of it depends on how much they're kind of entrenched in the legacy world that they're trying to modernize, how much they're doing more greenfield types of development work, or maybe they're doing a hybrid, which is one of the things I did early on, is carve off a part of a monolithic application and rebuild it in containers and microservices. So you can iterate in that space of the app more quickly. I think there's a lot of that kind of effort going on, because replacing an entire app to a new architecture is kind of folly. Usually the person that proposes that loses their job about the second budget cycle when we're late and don't know when we're going to deliver it. So it goes to the next project manager or architect. But if you're going to build software today, it is about microservices. It is about service mesh containers and leveraging things that you can build into much smaller software elements. That has become the default, kind of the new stack, if you will, of how we develop applications. And I can't tell you that everybody in every case does that, but I think most organizations are moving at their own pace into that direction.
Let me dig a little deeper too in that. The idea of the container. So when we look at security, Carolyn Wong, who I'm a big fan of from Cobalt.io, she talks about defensive and offensive security techniques. For the most part, what we've done today is defensive. Scan your code, look for vulnerabilities. That's a defensive act. What we have to move to is now we, as she says, we need both the shield and the sword. And we need to move into more offensive acts. So once a vulnerability gets in there, what do? I like the ideas of chaos engineering. You can't predict when there's going to be a problem. All you can do is make sure you can respond as quickly as possible. Now, the other problem that we're running into in security in this area is the fact that all the tooling that we do is based on the workflow. And what does a workflow create in a microservices environment? It creates one tiny little library for the most part, if we're doing it right. It creates one container, and we're doing security for one tiny bit at a time. It would be like taking a monolith, instead of having a security posture for the entire application, you have a security posture for all of the tiny little Lego pieces that you created. So the data is now out of context and it's fragmented. And this is partly because we rely on the workflow process to generate the information, and we generate it on the object or artifact we're creating. And now in microservices, we're creating potentially one API. And that doesn't give us enough visibility to understand the security posture and what do we need to do if somebody breaks in. As I like to say, if somebody breaks in, we need an Uzi, right? We need a way to really respond to things as fast as possible. We need the knowledge of how to respond. Not necessarily, it's no longer a defense, it's an offense. And I think more time and effort needs to be put into offensive measures, because no matter how good we are at scanning software and identifying vulnerabilities, we have to be able to respond to them. And that's really where the focus should be, in my humble opinion. I love chaos engineering. I love what they did with, the idea of root cause analysis is important, but let's figure that out when we have time. Let's get the system back online. Let's bring it back to a healthy state, and then worry about root cause analysis. And we're not necessarily thinking about that in security, because oftentimes the security tooling is being pushed by the CISO office, and they have things that they would like to see, but those things that they would like to see are not necessarily offensive. It's not offensive data, it's defensive data. And I think Carolyn Wong gets it right when she talks about this, the two sides of this coin.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll also, just to chime in briefly here, is when we pair together this rapid iteration of Agile and this decomposition of systems into dozens, if not hundreds of systems in an enterprise environment, and then we pair that with attacks and discovered vulnerabilities every day, it seems like we're entering a new frontier, or, like, to your point, Tracy and Mitch, we have to take a new approach to security in modern microservices enterprise environments. I mixed words up a bit there, but I think you guys get the gist.
If I can, I'm going to throw this idea out, and I've run this by Brian and Tracy already, so I feel some, I don't know if I would say safety, but some confidence that this might be a reasonable idea. Instead of thinking shifting left or shifting right or shifting everywhere, I think we've seen the rise of software supply chain attacks, right? We're worried about vulnerabilities entering into the DevOps workflow, coming through package managers and third-party repositories, whatever it might be. So kind of have to worry about security on multiple levels. And I think we've gone through, or maybe we're still in this phase of helping security engineers understand enough about software so we can kind of talk Reese's peanut butter cups instead of peanut butter and chocolate, that isn't so, that gets a little messy. But we need to think about security, I think, on two horizontal levels and also as a stack. One of the flows is the process of creating software and the software that we create. So we want to create secure applications, whether it's that one microservice module or it's the entire flow of all of it, right? And so how do we create an architecture that is secure, both in our design of it and also the tech stack we're running on it, Kubernetes, et cetera. The good news about that for the people with the security hat on, it may not be as strong in software, is that a microservice architecture looks a lot like a network with APIs talking to each other instead of devices. It's services talking to each other. So it's a lot easier to comprehend, I think, for folks that are entering it from a security zone. The other is the underlying platform, tool chain, et cetera, that we create software with and the inputs to that software. So securing CI/CD pipeline, securing the platform that all occurs on, because guess what? If you get in there, which is what SolarWinds was, you are now able to inject code into your development process through the platform, not just the software that's being created on top of it. So to me, that's modern days DevSecOps, end-to-end SDLC and end-to-end platforms that we're using and technologies to create it. So it's think of it 2 layers in both directions. And it's a bigger problem, but if you don't address it holistically, I think we're still whack-a-moling the security problem, whether we call it DevSecOps or something else.
And that the idea of the shift left, I love that you kind of call that out, Mitch, because it's kind of our go-to thing, right? Oh, we got to shift left. Everything always has to shift left. Well, that means put it on the developer's plate. And they have so much on their plate already that it's almost unfair for them to be asked to do anything more, and especially on the security. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing defensive measures early in the pipeline. We should be, but that's just it's just not reasonable to believe that that's going to catch everything. We know that things are going to get through. We know that nefarious, code's going to get pushed through, and packages that are transitive that come up through the supply chain. So again, we got to have both sides. Maybe the left side is defensive and the right side is offensive. Think about it as it's a hockey game.
Where's the
Well-
blue line?
Yeah, exactly. Where is the blue line?
We're down to our last 5 minutes or so here, but I think we have time for one more. And fortunately, the last question I have for you relates to exactly what you're talking about. When I think about AI in terms of security, I think, well, people who mean harm are going to be using AI to damage your systems, to damage your applications. But then also the people on the other end who are trying to protect your applications and systems are going to be using AI as well, right? So it is going to be that hockey match. We might just have robots sitting on both ends fighting each other. But Tracy, maybe I'll direct this one to you since you're the last one talking here. What do you see as the role of AI being in the future of enterprise security?
Well, I think about it from the standpoint of DevOps. And when I think about AI, I think about machine learning and large language models. And in particular, in LLMs, we have to have training data, right, in order to build those. We can try to make that training data up, but it's not the best way to go about it. So in order for AI to be a reality in this space, and we'll just call it DevSecOps, we have to be able to centralize the information. We have to be able to have these big evidence stores that has that information in it so that we can start building the training data. So in DevOps, I don't believe we have one central place for the training data. We have dev information and we have ops information, and we may have security information in the form of an SBOM, but we don't have it in a central evidence store. And that's where our head is. And I believe if we really want to be able to succeed, we're going to have the training data. Otherwise, it's just going to be based on guesses.
It's data, right? We talk about AI. AI is nothing without data. That's all about the data, to your point, Tracy, on training and availability and in a consumable way, right? Whether it's machine language algorithms or it's LLM training, et cetera. I mean, I think on the way to the let's call it the bot cyber war, when they're attacking each other with AI. A lot of this that we're seeing now and we'll continue to see are augmented and aids for information and what's happening, and then actions that you can take. By the way, this applies to DevOps and software development too. We must get much better at incident response, not just prevention, to your offensive point. But a big emphasis now is, okay, even more narrowly, get me to the information that I need to understand what's happening, because our systems are very complex, interrelated, lots of factors to consider. So help me analyze that information. Also use large amounts of data, whether it's coming from DevOps or it's coming from security incidents or a cloud provider that's a security service provider, to help us recognize the kinds of attacks and trends and things that can be consumed through machine learning, because it loves lots of data to do learning. The other, though, is the run book. What do I do? What happens? What am I supposed to do? Okay, and now I know this happened. Now what? Right? And your education or skill level or whatever of the person who's looking at this, you don't have to escalate everything to a 10-year, 20-year security expert to solve that. Sometimes, time is of the essence. So I think we're going to see more and more emphasis on, which is where kind of the LLMs also really come in, is help me understand the run book of what this situation demands. And so we do the right set of things and we don't make the problem worse. And I think AI is a big aid in all of those for us. Maybe we'll see the cyber war, AI Mageddon happen someday soon. Maybe it's sooner than I think, but on the way to that, I think we're going to see a lot of augmented AI security types of capabilities.
Yeah, and I feel like right now we are at a risk, especially since we'll kind of say black hats tend to adopt emerging technology faster, right, than enterprises do, right? We are at a time where I think it's an increasingly asymmetrical war between those bad actors and the software and systems that we need to protect. And, I believe that applying AI in enterprise security is going to be one of those key levelers. And it's going to be in a couple areas. One is it's going to be a horrible analogy, guys, but I watched Sunday's House of Dragons yesterday, right? Which gets me, thinking about, at the end of the day, your application portfolio is this expanding sort of kingdom where you no longer have this monolith with big walls around it and four corners that you can protect. So when I have a bunch of fiefdoms within my kingdom, how can I ensure that I am continuously protecting those? Putting a guy on the horse to run around and check every one isn't working anymore, right? I'm going to need some multiplying factor. And in this case, I think it's the AI dragon, right? That can continually sort of spin and scan. And then the other thing that you hit, Mitch, which I love, I really want to underscore is not everybody's a security expert. Let's think of Phoenix Project. Let's think of, I always forget if it's Brett or Brent, right? Brent. Where not everybody can be the security expert. We need a way to diffuse and distribute this knowledge, and encoding this knowledge to enable people to know what to put in the run book, for instance, is really interesting. So I think those are some great comments. I'm really excited. This is the part where I'm supposed to sort of wrap up what I heard from you guys, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong or right. So this is kind of the stump the chump for Brian here. Look, I think what I'm hearing from you guys is, we went through an iteration of DevOps and DevSecOps, and as with technology, everything evolves and moves on. But in that evolution, I hear that we really still haven't truly conquered enabling continuous security throughout the software development lifecycle. I hear that we're entering it or have entered a new world where most enterprises have adopted decoupled systems, which require a different level of tracking. And we're entering in a world where the threats are increasing. So we need some more proactive, some more automated, and some more intelligent solutions to ensure DevSecOps becomes a reality. How close was I? Did I pass the test, Mitch or Tracy?
I think we could use a few dragons when we're in an offensive mode, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a research report I need summarized.
She just wants a dragon. My wife just wants a dragon for something. But sorry to interrupt, Mitch.
Why do you think I ride horses? I ride horses
got a
because
research. No, I've got a research report I need summarized. Brian, can you hang on after the webinar?
Yeah, exactly.
Brian GPT. Well,
there we go.
Thank you guys for those inputs. I'm going to hand it over to Jim to talk logistics and set us up for a Q&A session. So please hang out because we in the audience have some questions for you.
Cool. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, and thank you, Tracy and Mitch as well. Awesome discussion. I wish we could go longer here. We are going to go a little bit longer for everyone who's here. We do have some great questions. Actually, I see some familiar names as well, people who come out to the live events that we do as well. So we're going to stick around to answer these questions for everybody. If you're watching us on YouTube, this is where we end the video. If you'd like to participate in the Q&A and the trivia at the beginning, just make sure you come to the events live and come a little bit early for the trivia. And you can go to NADOG.com to see the list of all of the upcoming virtual and in-person regional events.
Drop knowledge, pure delight. DevOps chatter, turn the volume high. Brian and Jim bringing summer vibes.